Kyle Martinez walked into the massive council chamber and felt the familiar weight of 1,000 eyes watching him. The human ambassador straightened his dark blue uniform jacket and tried to ignore the sounds coming from the alien delegates. Some were making clicking noises with their claws. Others were producing what could only be described as laughter. Though it sounded like steam escaping from broken pipes, the chamber itself was enormous, easily the size of 10 football stadiums. Floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy. Each species had their own section with special air mixtures, gravity fields, or temperature controls. The humans sat in the basic section near the bottom, breathing regular air like the other newer species. Lisa Harper sat next to Kyle, her captain's uniform crisp and clean. She had been chosen to represent the human military because of her calm nature, but even she was struggling to keep her expression neutral. Above them, a creature that looked like a walking crystal formation was making grinding sounds that passed for chuckling among his people. "Look at the humans down there," the crystal being said to his neighbor, a slug-like creature with purple skin. "They want us to take their military seriously. Have you seen their ships? They still use metal hulls and chemical rockets." The slug creature oozed closer to get a better look. "I heard they still fight wars on their home planet. With bullets and explosives. How primitive can you get?" Jake Collins sat in the observation area reserved for military advisors. The admiral had gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a ship engineer. He watched the alien delegates point at the human section and whisper among themselves. His jaw tightened, but he kept his face blank. A new hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a comparison chart of different species' military capabilities. Human ships appeared at the bottom of every category: speed, weapons power, shield strength, and armor thickness. The numbers made humanity look like children playing with toys. Senator Vexthal stood up on his platform. The six-eyed creature was from one of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy. His people had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. "We are here today to discuss the human petition for full council membership," Vexthal announced. His voice carried clearly through the chamber's translation system. "The humans have been associate members for 3 years. They wish to become full members with voting rights and military recognition." A wave of amused sounds swept through the chamber. Kyle could hear chirping, buzzing, and what sounded like a dozen different kinds of laughter. Vexthal continued, "The requirements for full membership are clear. A species must demonstrate the ability to defend Council territory and contribute to galactic security. Let us examine the human military capabilities." New holograms filled the air around the chamber. They showed human warships next to the vessels of established species. The difference was embarrassing. Human ships looked like metal boxes with engines stuck on the back. The alien ships were sleek, covered in energy shields and bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. "The largest human warship masses 2.3 million tons, Vexthal read from his datapad. "It is powered by nuclear fusion and armed with kinetic weapons. For comparison, a standard hegemony patrol vessel masses 800,000 tons, but carries plasma cannons with 50 times the destructive power." More laughter echoed through the chamber. Kyle felt his face getting warm, but he kept his expression calm. Lisa reached over and touched his arm gently, reminding him to stay controlled. A new voice spoke up from across the chamber. "Hi, Chancellor." Morden of the crystalline hegemony was a being of living mineral who commanded respect from every species in the galaxy. Her people controlled the most advanced technology in known space. "Perhaps we should consider the human request more carefully," she said. The chamber grew quiet. "They have shown remarkable determination in reaching this point. Their exploration of space has been rapid, considering their technological limitations." Kyle felt a moment of hope, but it was quickly crushed. "However," Morden continued, "determination alone cannot overcome the laws of physics. Human vessels would be destroyed in seconds by any serious military threat. Granting them full membership would be like asking children to guard adults." The laughter started again, louder this time. Kyle could see alien delegates leaning over their platform rails to get a better look at the humans. Some were taking pictures with devices he did not recognize. A creature that looked like a giant insect raised one of its four arms. "I have a question for the human delegation," it said. "How exactly do you plan to contribute to galactic defense? Your ships cannot even travel faster than light without using our stargates." Kyle stood up slowly. He had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it for months. "Honorable delegates," he began, "humanity understands that our technology appears primitive compared to your achievements. We use older methods because they are what we know how to build reliably." "Older methods," repeated the insect creature. "You mean obsolete methods?" "Our ships may be slower," Kyle continued, "but they are tough. Our weapons may seem simple, but they work. We have been testing them for hundreds of years." "Testing them on each other?" called out a voice from the upper galleries. This brought a fresh wave of laughter. Vextel tapped his platform rail for silence. "Ambassador Martinez, your species' history of constant warfare is well documented. This is precisely why many members question human stability. A species that cannot achieve peace with itself cannot be trusted to keep peace in the galaxy." Lisa Harper stood up next to Kyle. "Senator Vextel, with respect, our history of conflict has taught us valuable lessons about warfare and defense. We understand combat in ways that peaceful species might not." "Understanding primitive combat," corrected a delegate from the back of the chamber. "Your people fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. Our weapons are based on antimatter and controlled plasma. There is no comparison." Jake Collins watched from the observation deck as the discussion continued. The aliens were not being deliberately cruel, he realized. They genuinely saw humans as a curiosity, a young species that would need centuries to catch up. They thought they were being kind by not laughing harder. The presentation continued for another hour. Charts showed human population growth, economic development, and technological advancement. Every graph made the same point. Humans were progressing quickly for such a young species, but they were still far behind the galactic standard. "The human petition for military recognition is denied," Vextel finally announced. "We encourage continued human participation in trade agreements and scientific exchanges. Perhaps in 50 or 100 years, when human technology has advanced sufficiently, we can revisit this discussion." The chamber began to empty as delegates filed out through various exits. Kyle could hear their conversations as they passed. "The human section. Did you see their missile designs? They actually use chemical propellants. I heard they still have wars over water and land on their home planet. Give them time. Every species goes through a primitive phase." Lisa packed her datapad and files carefully. "That went about as expected," she said quietly. Kyle nodded. "At least we got them to look at our information." Jake Collins made his way down from the observation deck to join them. "Gentleman and lady," he said, "I think it is time we considered other options." "What do you mean?" Kyle asked the Admiral. "Looked around to make sure no alien delegates were within hearing range. I mean, it's time to stop asking for permission and start demonstrating capabilities. The next time there is trouble in the galaxy, we should be ready to respond," Lisa frowned. "The Council specifically forbids military action by associate members." "The Council," Jake said with a thin smile, "assumes that associate members are not capable of effective military action. They might be surprised." As they walked toward the exit, Kyle could still hear alien delegates discussing the humans. The laughter had died down, but the condescending tone remained. Humanity was still the newest kid on the galactic playground, and everyone seemed determined to keep them in their place. What none of the departing delegates noticed was the look in Jake Collins' eyes. It was the expression of a man who had spent his entire career being underestimated, and who had learned to use that assumption as a weapon. The real test was coming soon. Danny Wright stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the stars streak past the main window. The human exploration ship was 3 months into a routine survey mission in the Outer Rim territories. It was boring work, but someone had to map the new sectors that kept opening up as the galaxy expanded. The Defiance was not much to look at compared to alien ships. She was a basic metal hull with thick armor plating and simple fusion engines. Her crew of 200 humans lived in cramped quarters and ate recycled food. But she was reliable, and she could go places where fancier ships might break down. "Captain," called Amy Foster from the communications station, "I am picking up something strange on the long-range sensors." Danny walked over to look at her screen. Amy was young for a communications officer, but she had good instincts. If she thought something was strange, it probably was. "What kind of strange?" he asked. "Multiple signals from the Kepler system," Amy said, adjusting her headset. "They are broadcasting on emergency frequencies." "The signals are coming from Kepler 442b. Danny knew that planet. It was home to the Aqualians, a peaceful species that looked like walking fish. They had joined the galactic community 50 years ago and spent most of their time farming algae and trading with nearby systems. They had never bothered anyone. "Put it on the main speakers," Danny ordered. The bridge filled with a garbled transmission. The universal translator struggled to make sense of it, but eventually words started coming through clearly. "This is the Aqualian Defense Command. We are under attack." "Repeat, we are under attack." "Multiple hostile ships have entered our system. They are demanding immediate surrender. Please send help." The transmission cut to static, then picked up again. This time the voice sounded different, more panicked. "Defense Fleet 7 is gone. They destroyed our ships in minutes. The Vorthans are not accepting our surrender. They are bombing our cities. Anyone receiving this transmission, please contact the Galactic Council. Tell them the Vorthans have invaded Kepler 442b. Danny felt his stomach tighten. The Vorthans were bad news. They were a warrior species with crystal-like skin and a belief that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. Their empire had been growing steadily for the past few years, absorbing smaller civilizations. "Amy, how far are we from Kepler 442b? Danny asked. 6 hours at maximum speed, sir." "Any other ships in the area?" Amy checked her sensors carefully. "Negative, sir. The nearest council patrol is 2 days away." Danny looked around the bridge at his crew. They were all watching him. Waiting for orders, he knew what he was supposed to do. Standard procedure was to report the situation to Earth Command and wait for instructions. Getting involved in alien conflicts was strictly forbidden for associate members of the Galactic Council, but 6 hours was a long time when people were dying. "Take us to the edge of the Kepler system," Danny ordered. "Maximum speed. Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we found." "Sir," said Lieutenant Brad Johnson from the tactical station. "If the Vorthans are really attacking, we should stay away. Our ship is not designed for combat." Danny nodded. "We are not going to fight, Brad. We are going to observe and report. But those people need to know that someone heard their call for help." The Defiance changed course and accelerated toward the Kepler system. Danny went to his ready room and pulled up everything the ship's computer had about the Vorthans. What he read made him feel worse about the situation. The Vorthan Empire controlled 12 star systems and had a military force that most species feared. Their ships used antimatter reactors and plasma weapons that could melt through almost any armor. They had conquered 6 different species in the past century. Usually by offering them a choice between slavery and death. Most species chose slavery. The worst part was that the Vorthans enjoyed fighting. They saw war as a form of art and took pride in how efficiently they could destroy their enemies. They often let some survivors live just so they could spread stories about Vorthan power. 6 hours later, the Defiance dropped out of faster than light. Travel at the edge of the Kepler system. What Danny saw on the main screen made him sick to his stomach. 12 massive Vorthan warships hung in space around the blue-green planet. Each ship was nearly 2 kilometers long and covered in weapons that glowed with contained energy. They looked like predators circling wounded prey. "Sir," Amy reported, "I am reading debris fields where the Aqualian defense fleet used to be. There are no life signs from any of the wreckage. What about the planet?" "Multiple impact sites on the surface. The Vorthans appeared to be bombing major cities. I'm still picking up some emergency transmissions, but they are getting weaker. Danny stared at the tactical display. The Vorthan ships showed up as red triangles surrounding the green dot that represented Kepler 442b. The Defiance was barely a speck in comparison, hiding at the edge of the system like a mouse watching cats. "Sir," Brad said quietly, "one of the Vorthan ships has noticed us. They are scanning our position." On the main screen, the largest Vorthan vessel began to turn toward them. Even at this distance, Danny could see weapons beginning to charge along its hull. "Are they targeting us?" Danny asked. "Negative, sir. They seem to be ignoring us." That was somehow worse than being targeted. The Vorthans did not see the human ship as a threat worth acknowledging. They were letting the Defiance watch because they wanted witnesses to their power. Amy suddenly straightened at her station. "Sir, I am receiving a transmission from the Vorthan flagship. They are broadcasting on an open channel. Put it through." The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the Vorthan vessel. The creature standing in the center was tall and imposing, with skin that looked like polished black stone. His name appeared at the bottom of the screen: War Commander Zektar. "Attention, human vessel," Zektar said. His voice was deep and seemed to echo from inside his chest. "You are witnessing the fate of those who resist the Vorthan Empire. The Aqualians were given the opportunity to surrender and join our forces. They chose to fight instead." Zektar gestured to something off-screen, and the view changed to show the planet below. Bright flashes of light marked where Vorthan weapons were striking the surface. "This is what happens to species that overestimate their own strength," Zektar continued. "You may observe, you may record. When you return to your council, tell them what you have seen. Tell them that the Vorthan Empire grows stronger while they debate and delay." The transmission ended. Danny found that his hands were shaking with anger. "Sir," Amy said, "I am receiving final transmissions from the planet. The Aqualian government is requesting immediate evacuation assistance for civilian populations." Danny closed his eyes and tried to think. There were probably millions of Aqualians on that planet. His ship could maybe carry 1,000 people if they packed them in like cargo. It would not make any real difference, but it would be something. "Open a channel to the planet." "Sir," Brad warned, "the Vorthans will hear anything we broadcast. I know." Danny straightened his uniform and faced the main screen. "This is Captain Danny Wright of the human vessel UES Defiance. Any Aqualian survivors, please respond." A weak signal came through the static. "This is Counselor Reefsinger of the Eastern Continent. Most of our cities are destroyed, but we have refugee camps in the Southern Ocean. Can you help us?" Danny looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him with expressions that mixed hope and fear. They all knew that helping the Aqualians would mean breaking council regulations. It might also mean fighting the Vorthans. "Counselor Reefsinger, we are going to try. Prepare your people for evacuation. We are coming in." "Sir," Brad said urgently, "the Vorthan ships are moving to intercept us." Danny smiled grimly. "Then I guess we are going to find out how tough this old ship really is. All hands, prepare for combat operations. Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell Admiral Collins that we need backup, and we need it fast." The Defiance began moving toward the planet, her engines glowing brighter as Danny pushed them to maximum power. Behind them, 12 Vorthan warships began to give chase. The real war was about to begin. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 12 hours after the first reports of the Vorthan attack reached the Central Worlds. Kyle Martinez sat in the human section and watched as delegates filed into the Great Chamber. Their faces showed concern, but not the kind of urgency he had expected. High Chancellor Morden called the session to order with a gentle chime from her crystalline form. "We are here to discuss the Vorthan aggression against the Aqualian homeworld. Initial reports suggest a complete military defeat of Aqualian forces." Senator Vexthal stood up on his floating platform. "The Vorthan Empire has sent an official communication to this council. They claimed the Aqualians attacked first and that their response was defensive in nature. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Kyle felt his anger rising. He had received the real reports from Captain Wright. The Aqualians had never fired a shot. They had tried to surrender before the fighting even started. What evidence do we have of Aqualian aggression? Asked a delegate from the Centauri Republic. War Commander Zektar has provided sensor logs showing Aqualian ships moving toward Vorthan vessels. Vexthal replied. According to their interpretation, this constituted a hostile act. Kyle stood up. Chancellor Morden, I request permission to present human observations of the attack. The chamber grew quiet. Several delegates turned to look at the human section. With surprise. Most had forgotten that humans even had ships in that region of space. The human delegation may speak, Morden said. Kyle activated his datapad and sent the information to the main display. The human exploration vessel UES Defiance was conducting routine surveys when they received Aqualian distress calls. Captain Wright observed the entire attack from long-range sensors. The holographic display showed the tactical situation as recorded by the Defiance. 12 Vorthan warships surrounded the planet while smaller Aqualian vessels tried desperately to escape the system. As you can see, Kyle continued, the Aqualian ships were fleeing, not attacking. Their defense fleet was destroyed in less than 20 minutes. The Vorthans then began bombing civilian targets on the planet's surface. The delegate from the hegemony leaned forward in his seat. These are human sensor readings. How do we know? They are accurate. Human technology is known to be unreliable. Kyle felt his face getting warm, but he kept his voice level. Our sensors may be simple, but they record exactly what they see. We have no reason to lie about this situation. Senator Vexthal made a dismissive gesture with one of his 6 arms. The reliability of human technology is not the main issue here. The question is what this council should do about Vorthan expansion. We should impose economic sanctions, suggested the delegate from Proxima Station. Cut off their trade routes and force them to withdraw. The Vorthans are largely self-sufficient, replied another voice. Economic pressure will not work. Then we should send a diplomatic mission, said a third delegate. Open negotiations for Aqualian independence? Kyle listened to the debate with growing frustration. The aliens were treating this like a business dispute instead of a massacre. They talked about trade agreements and diplomatic protocols while millions of Aqualians were probably dead or enslaved. High Chancellor Morden raised one crystalline hand for silence. The Council recognizes that the Vorthan Empire has become increasingly aggressive in recent years. However, direct military intervention would require a unanimous vote, and frankly, none of our member species possess sufficient force to challenge. Vorthan battle fleets. What about a combined fleet? Asked the Centauri delegate. The logistics would be impossible, Vexthal answered. Our ship designs are too different. Our weapon systems are incompatible. It would take years to plan such an operation. Kyle stood up again. Chancellor Morden, the human delegation formally requests permission to deploy our fleet to the Outer Rim territories. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates were laughing. Others were making concerned clicking sounds. A few seemed genuinely worried about human safety. The crystal being from the upper galleries called out, Ambassador Martinez, are you suggesting that humans fight the Vorthans? That would be suicide. Your largest warship would be destroyed by a single Vorthan plasma cannon, added the slug-like delegate. This is not courage. This is madness. Kyle waited for the noise to die down before speaking again. We understand the risks involved. However, the human government believes we have a moral obligation to protect innocent civilians. Senator Vexthal's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, which was his species' way of showing disbelief. Ambassador Martinez, your courage is admirable, but courage cannot overcome the laws of physics. Vorthan antimatter reactors produce 1,000 times more power than your fusion engines. Their plasma weapons can melt through any known armor. With respect, Senator, Kyle replied, you have never tested your weapons against human armor. This brought another wave of laughter from the chamber. The delegate from the crystalline hegemony leaned over his platform rail to get a better look at Kyle. Human armor is made from steel and titanium alloys, the delegate said. We have complete technical specifications from your trade applications. A single plasma bolt would vaporize your hull plating. Kyle smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Those specifications show our civilian ship construction. Our military vessels use different materials and different designs. The laughter stopped. Several delegates exchanged glances with each other. Kyle had their attention now. Admiral Jake Collins entered the chamber and walked down to the human section. He had been listening to the debate from the observation area, but now he requested permission to address the council directly. Admiral Collins, Morden said. The council recognizes the human military representative. Jake stood at the podium and activated his own data display. New technical specifications appeared in the air above the chamber. The numbers were different from anything the aliens had seen before. Honorable delegates, Jake began, I appreciate your concern for human lives. However, I believe you have made several critical errors in your assessment of our capabilities. The holographic display showed cross-sections of human warships. The armor was much thicker than anyone had expected, with multiple layers of different materials. The weapon systems were larger and more sophisticated than the simple kinetic launchers the aliens had seen in trade demonstrations. Our warships are specifically designed to fight opponents with superior technology, Jake continued. We have studied every major military power in the galaxy. We know how your weapons work, how your shields operate, and how your engines function. The chamber was completely quiet now. Even the usual background noise of alien breathing and movement had stopped. How is this possible? Asked the hegemony delegate. Your species has been in space for less than 2 centuries. Jake's expression grew serious. Delegate, humanity has been at war with itself for its entire recorded history. We have spent thousands of years learning how to kill each other efficiently. When we finally reached space, we brought that knowledge with us. Senator Vexthal made a nervous gesture with his claws. Are you threatening this council? Not at all, Jake replied. I'm simply pointing out that humans have extensive experience with warfare. The Vorthans may have better technology, but they have been fighting mostly peaceful species. They are not used to facing opponents who fight back effectively. Kyle stepped forward to stand next to the Admiral. The human fleet is already moving toward the outer rim. We will engage Vorthan forces within 72 hours. This is insane, called out a voice from the upper galleries. You will all be killed, Jake looked up toward the speaker. Maybe, but the Vorthans will know they were in a fight, and maybe that will make them think twice before attacking the next peaceful species. High Chancellor Morden stood up from her platform. Her crystalline form caught the chamber lights and threw rainbow patterns across the walls. The Council cannot authorize this action, she said formally. Human ships operating in Council space without permission would be considered rogue vessels. We understand, Kyle replied. However, associate member status does give us the right to defend ourselves if attacked. If the Vorthans fire on our ships, we will respond accordingly. The chamber began to empty as delegates filed out through various exits. Kyle could hear their conversations as they passed the human section. The humans have lost their minds. This will be a massacre. Someone should contact their government and talk sense into them. But a few delegates stopped to speak with Kyle. Directly, the representative from Kepler 186b, a species that had lost their own colonies to Vorthan expansion, shook Kyle's hand with 3 of his 4 arms. Good luck, Ambassador, the alien said quietly. I hope you prove us all wrong. As the chamber emptied, Admiral Collins gathered his datapads and prepared to leave. Kyle walked with him toward the exit. Do you really think we can win? Kyle, asked Jake smiled grimly. Kyle, the Vorthans are about to learn something that every human military officer knows by heart. What is that? Never underestimate an opponent who has nothing left to lose. The UES Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system like a mountain suddenly appearing in an empty field. Admiral Jake Collins stood on the bridge of the massive battleship and watched as his tactical Displays filled with red dots marking enemy positions. The Retribution was the largest warship humanity had ever built. She was 3 kilometers long and massed over 8 million tons. Her hull was covered in thick armor plates that looked like overlapping scales. Most aliens who had seen pictures of her called her ugly, but Jake thought she was beautiful. "Admiral," reported Commander Pete Harrison from the tactical station, "I count 12 Vorthan warships in defensive formation around the planet. They appear to be holding position and waiting for us." Jake nodded. "Weapon status?" "All railgun. Batteries charged and ready. Missile tubes loaded with penetrator warheads. The gravity lance is online and ready for deployment." Jake smiled at that last item. The gravity lance was humanity's newest weapon, something the aliens had never seen before. He was looking forward to showing it off. On the main screen, the Vorthan fleet looked impressive. Each ship was sleek and deadly, covered in weapons that glowed with contained energy. They hung in space around the blue-green planet like sharks. Circling their prey, War Commander Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human vessel approach. The single ship was larger than he had expected, but size meant nothing if the armor was weak and the weapons were primitive. "Analysis," he ordered his tactical officer. "The human vessel appears to be using standard metal construction," the officer reported. "Dense armor plating but no energy shields. Weapons appear to be kinetic projectile systems." "No plasma cannons detected?" Zektar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "They brought one ship to fight our entire battle group. Their courage is admirable, even if their intelligence is questionable." "Shall we offer them surrender terms?" asked his communications officer. "No," Zektar replied. "Let them attack first. I want to see what human weapons can do before we destroy them. It will make an interesting report for the Empire." "Captain." Rachel Martinez sat on the bridge of the human cruiser UES Vengeance, monitoring communications from her position 50,000 kilometers behind the Retribution. Her ship was smaller and faster, designed to provide support and rescue operations if the main battle went badly. "Admiral Collins is hailing the Vorthan fleet," reported her communications officer. "Put it on speakers," Rachel ordered. Jake's voice filled the bridge of the Vengeance. "Vorthan vessels, this is Admiral Collins of the Human Space Navy. You are ordered to withdraw from Aqualian territory immediately and release all prisoners," the reply came quickly. "Admiral Collins, this is War Commander Zektar. You are in violation of galactic law by bringing weapons into this system. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." "The only consequences here will be yours," Jake replied. "You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal." Rachel held her breath as the seconds ticked by. Around her, the bridge crew watched their displays with tense expressions. Everyone knew that the next few minutes would determine whether humanity had a future in space or would be remembered as the species that picked a fight they could not win. The 30 seconds passed. Nothing happened. "Vorthan fleet," Jake's voice continued, "you have chosen poorly. All ships, weapons free, engage the enemy." The battle began at maximum range with both fleets firing simultaneously. Vorthan plasma cannons sent streams of superheated energy racing across space toward the human ships. The bright beams looked like lightning bolts connecting the two forces. The plasma struck the Retribution's hull and spread across her armor, plating like water hitting a hot pan. The metal glowed white-hot where the energy touched it, but the thick plates held firm. Steam and vapor poured off the ship's surface, but no serious damage was visible. Zektar stared at his tactical display in confusion. "Direct hits on the human vessel. Why is it still intact?" "Sir," his tactical officer replied, "their armor appears to be absorbing the plasma energy and distributing it across the entire hull surface. The individual plates are designed to flex and bend without breaking. Impossible. No metal can withstand direct plasma bombardment. Sir, they are returning fire." The Retribution's response came in the form of tungsten rods accelerated to nearly the speed of light. The railgun batteries fired in sequence, sending streams of metal projectiles toward the Vorthan fleet. Each rod was only the size of a telephone pole. but it carried the kinetic energy of a small nuclear weapon. The first salvo punched through the Vorthan shields like they were made of paper. The energy barriers that could deflect plasma beams were useless against solid objects moving at relativistic speeds. Two Vorthan dreadnoughts exploded instantly as the tungsten rods cored through their hulls and detonated their reactor cores. "Impossible," Zektar whispered. "Their weapons should not be able to penetrate our defenses." "Sir," his tactical officer reported with panic in his voice, "the human projectiles are moving too fast for our shields to stop. The energy barriers are designed for plasma and particle beams, not solid objects." "Then take evasive action. Use our speed advantage." The Vorthan ships began to scatter, trying to use their superior engines to avoid the human weapons. But the railgun rounds were too fast and the targeting computers too accurate. Another Vorthan ship disappeared in a ball of fire as tungsten rods tore through its engine section. Rachel watched the battle unfold from the Vengeance with amazement and growing excitement. "Sir, the Vorthan fleet is breaking formation. They appear to be retreating." "No," Jake's voice came over the communication channel. "Do not let them escape. All ships, pursue and destroy. No survivors." The Retribution accelerated toward the fleeing Vorthan vessels, her engines glowing bright blue as Jake pushed them to maximum power. The massive battleship moved with surprising speed for something so large. Pete Harrison worked frantically at his tactical station. "Admiral, targeting the lead Vorthan vessel with the gravity lance." "Fire when ready," Jake ordered. The gravity lance was humanity's secret weapon, developed from theoretical physics that most aliens thought was impossible. It created a focused beam of gravitational energy that could crush matter at the molecular level. An invisible beam reached out from the Retribution toward Zektar's flagship. The Vorthan ship began to compress like a tin can being squeezed by invisible hands. Metal plates buckled inward. Windows shattered. The entire vessel folded in on itself until it was a tiny ball of compressed matter. "What just happened?" Rachel asked her science officer. "I think the humans just turned a 2-kilometer warship into a marble." The officer replied Zektar had just enough time to realize that he had completely misjudged human capabilities before his ship's hull collapsed around him. His last thought was that the Empire needed to be warned about these primitive humans who fought with impossible weapons. The remaining Vorthan ships tried desperately to escape the system, but the human fleet was relentless. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. Railgun rounds and missile barrages tore through their hulls while gravity lances crushed them into nothing within 2 hours. The entire Vorthan battle group was destroyed. Not a single enemy ship escaped to carry word of their defeat back to the Empire. Jake stood on the bridge of the Retribution and surveyed the debris field that had once been the pride of the Vorthan military. His ship had taken minor damage from the plasma bombardment, but nothing that could not be repaired quickly. "Admiral," Pete reported, "we are receiving surrender signals from the planet's surface. The Vorthan ground forces are requesting terms." "No terms," Jake replied. "Total surrender or total destruction. Their choice." Captain Danny Wright's voice came over the communication channel from the Defiance, which had been helping with evacuation operations during the battle. "Admiral, the Aqualian survivors are asking about refugee resettlement. They want to know if Earth can provide temporary shelter." "Tell them yes," Jake answered. "Earth has plenty of room for people who need help." Rachel Martinez shook her head in wonder as she watched the tactical display clear of enemy contacts. "Sir, did we really just destroy an entire Vorthan battle fleet without losing a single ship?" "We did," Jake confirmed. "And now the real work begins. Pete, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need occupation forces and construction ships. We are going to rebuild this system and make sure nothing like this ever happens again." The bridge crew of the Vengeance erupted in cheers. They had just witnessed the impossible. Humanity had taken on one of the galaxy's most feared military powers and won decisively, but Jake Collins was not celebrating yet. He knew that this was just the beginning. Word of the battle would spread quickly through the galaxy. Some species would be impressed, others would be terrified. And the Vorthan Empire would certainly want revenge. The real test of human strength was still to come. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began exactly 18 hours after the last. Vorthan ship was destroyed at Kepler 442b. Kyle Martinez walked into the Great Chamber and immediately noticed that something had changed. The usual chatter and casual conversation among delegates was missing. Instead, there was a heavy silence that seemed to press down on everyone present. High Chancellor Morden took her position at the center podium. Her crystalline form seemed duller than usual, as if the light inside her had dimmed. "We are here to discuss recent events in the Outer Rim territories," she announced. Kyle looked around the chamber and saw that every single delegate was present. In 3 years of attending council sessions, he had never seen full attendance. Usually at least a dozen species sent excuses or junior representatives. Today, everyone had come personally. Senator Vexthal stood up on his platform. His 6 eyes were all focused on the human section. "The Council has received preliminary reports about the engagement between human and Vorthan forces. We request a full briefing from the human delegation." Admiral Jake Collins entered the chamber and walked down to join Kyle. The Admiral carried a datapad and moved with the confident stride of a man who had just won the most important battle of his career. But his expression was serious, almost grim. "Admiral Collins," Morden said, "the Council recognizes the human military representative." Jake stepped up to the main podium and activated the holographic display system. Images from the battle filled the air above the chamber. The delegates watched in complete silence as the recording showed Vorthan plasma weapons striking human armor and doing no serious damage. The engagement lasted approximately 2 hours. Jake reported in a calm, professional voice. Human forces destroyed 12 Vorthan warships without suffering any casualties. Enemy ground forces on Kepler 442b surrendered unconditionally. The chamber remained silent. No one laughed. No one made dismissive comments. The alien delegates stared at the battle footage with expressions that ranged from shock to fear. Jake continued his presentation. Vorthan plasma weapons proved ineffective against human armor designs. Our kinetic projectile systems penetrated their energy shields without difficulty. The enemy fleet was completely destroyed. A delegate from the hegemony finally spoke up. "Admiral Collins, these recordings show Vorthan dreadnoughts being destroyed by single shots from your weapons. How is this possible?" "Our railgun systems accelerate tungsten projectiles to 95% of light speed," Jake explained. "At those velocities, kinetic energy becomes more destructive than any explosive warhead. Energy shields cannot stop solid matter traveling at relativistic speeds." Senator Vexel's claws clicked nervously against his platform rail. "But your ship design showed standard metallurgy. Simple steel and titanium alloys." Jake smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. "Senator, those technical specifications were for our civilian vessels. Our military ships use very different materials and construction methods." "What kind of materials?" asked the crystal being from the upper galleries. "Classified," Jake replied simply. The word hung in the air like a challenge. For 3 years, humanity had shared every technical detail requested by the Council. They had provided blueprints, material samples, and complete manufacturing processes for everything from their food processors to their navigation computers. Now suddenly, they had military secrets. Kyle stood up next to the Admiral. "The human government has decided to change our approach to technology sharing. From now on, we will only provide technical information on a need-to-know basis." "This is unacceptable," protested the delegate from Proxima Station. "Open technology sharing is a requirement for Council membership." "For full membership, Kyle." "Corrected. Associate members have different obligations." High Chancellor Morden leaned forward on her platform. "Ambassador Martinez, are you suggesting that humans will no longer cooperate with Council scientific programs?" "Not at all," Kyle replied. We will continue to share civilian technologies and participate in joint research projects. However, our military capabilities will remain under human control. Jake activated a new display showing the current situation in the Outer Rim territories. Red dots mark the positions of human warships patrolling the region. The former Vorthan occupation zone is now under human protection. We have established defense stations at key locations and begun evacuating Aqualian refugees to safer systems. By whose authority? Demanded Vexthal. By right of conquest, Jake answered. The Vorthans lost their claim to that territory when they lost the battle. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Delegates turned to each other with worried expressions. The concept of right of conquest had not been used in galactic politics for over 1,000 years. Most species had forgotten that it was still technically legal under ancient council laws. A new voice spoke from the back of the chamber. What about the Vorthan Empire? They will certainly attempt to reclaim their lost territory. Jake's expression grew cold. Let them try. The simple confidence in those 3 words sent a chill through the assembled delegates. The humans were not making empty threats. They had just proven they could destroy Vorthan battle fleets. Now they were daring the Empire to send more ships. Kyle stepped forward to address the chamber. The human government wishes to make our position clear. We are prepared to defend any species that requests our protection. We will not tolerate aggressive expansion by military powers. And we will respond to attacks on human interests with overwhelming force. This sounds like a threat, said the slug-like delegate. It is a promise, Kyle replied. High Chancellor Morden stood up from her platform. The light inside her crystalline form seemed to pulse with nervous energy. The council must discuss these developments in closed session. Ambassador Martinez, Admiral Collins, you are dismissed. As the humans left the chamber, Kyle could hear urgent conversations beginning among the alien delegates. Some were arguing about the legal implications of human actions. Others were discussing whether their own territories might need human protection. A few were quietly talking about forming alliances with Earth. Outside the chamber, Jake and Kyle walked together toward the human embassy offices. The corridors of the council complex seemed strangely empty. Usually they were filled with staff, members and junior delegates running errands between meetings. How do you think they are taking the news? Kyle asked. About as well as expected, Jake replied. 3 days ago, they thought we were a joke. Today, they think we might be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Are we? Jake considered the question carefully. Kyle, we just destroyed an entire battle fleet without losing a single ship. We have weapons and defensive systems that no other species understands. And we have something that most of them lack. What is that? Experience with real warfare. Most galactic species have been peaceful for centuries. They have forgotten what it means to fight for survival. We never forgot. They reached the human embassy and found it surrounded by representatives from dozens of different species. Some were requesting formal meetings with the human government. Others were offering trade agreements and military alliances. A few were simply trying to get copies of the battle recordings. Captain Rachel Martinez was waiting for them in the main office. Her ship had remained in the Kepler system to oversee reconstruction efforts. She was participating in the meeting through a secure communication link. Admiral, she reported, we have received formal requests for protection from 6 different species in the Outer Rim. All of them are offering to pay for human defense services. Jake nodded. What about the Vorthan Empire? Any response from their central government? Nothing official, Rachel replied. But our intelligence sources report massive fleet movements in their core systems. They appear to be preparing for a major military operation. Kyle felt a knot forming in his stomach. How many ships are we talking about? Preliminary estimates suggest over 100 warships, Rachel answered. Possibly more. Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and Kyle realized that the Admiral was actually looking forward to the challenge. Good, Jake said finally. It will give us a chance to test our new weapon systems under combat conditions. Rachel, prepare the fleet for extended operations. Kyle, contact Earth Command and request additional ships. How many? Kyle asked. All of them. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the council chamber. High Chancellor Morden was requesting an immediate meeting with the human delegation. When they returned to the chamber, Kyle found that the atmosphere had changed again. The nervous energy was gone, replaced by something that looked like resignation. Ambassador Martinez, Morden announced, the Galactic Council has voted to grant humanity full membership status, effective immediately. The chamber was completely silent. No one applauded. No one offered congratulations. The aliens were not celebrating humanity's promotion. They were acknowledging a new reality. Humanity was no longer the new species asking for permission to join. The galactic community? They were the apex predator that had just announced its presence to the food chain. Senator Vexthal spoke for the entire council when he said, "Welcome to full membership, Ambassador Martinez. We hope that Earth will use its new status responsibly."